Hello, Internet. Welcome to Tales Showcase. I'm the Watcher of New Earth. Just thought I'd pop in with a quick casual check-in. I'm doing alright. Hope you're doing okay too. Boy, this weather certainly is happening, isn't it? Anywho, I'll let you go. I'm sure you've got things to see and people to do. After all, there's nothing mildly relevant to this channel that we could tie into for the sake of the algorithm. Is there? Oh yeah. Well, as I'm currently making my way through all initial series of the 2011 New 52 reboot in DC Comics, there's really not going to be a better time to release this video than now. So today we're doing Justice League. Original recipe Justice League. Written by longtime DC creative Jeff Johns with art by comic legend Jim Lee, Justice League was, unofficially, the flagship book of the New 52 event. However many different directions the other series went, this book was pitched as ground zero for the new continuity, which is probably why it had two of the biggest names at the company working on it. Now, the Justice League have been around since the 1960s and have had many different incarnations through the years. The classic, the comedic, the one no one likes, all memorable in their own way. This book has the unique problem of having to more or less ignore the last 5 or so decades of continuity and create a new team that's appealing to new readers while also not radically different so as to not alienate old readers. Does it work? Well, kinda, for the most part, but I want to talk about it all before we get to that. The story opens where most DC stories seem obligated to open, in Gotham City, where Batman is investigating some explosions happening near the docks, and as he questions a suspect, it turns out that the suspect was an alien. From there, Green Lantern arrives, having been alerted by his power ring, and they start investigating the invasion themselves. From then on, the predictable but reliable superhero trope of every other hero meeting up and then eventually forming into a team happens. Eventually, it's revealed that Darkseid, the big bad of the DC universe, was behind the invasion, and the League fights as one to send him back. You know, standard stuff, but again, reliably enjoyable. Now, for those of you who've seen more than one of my videos, you'd probably know that this is around the time that I would knock such a basic, predictable layout to a story. However, I think in this case, that could work to the benefit of the book. This book is not really about the alien invasion, it's more laying the groundwork for these characters that are going to become the pinnacles of this new continuity, so you'd hope that the focus would actually be on the characters as opposed to the story. So how does that work out? Well, let's start with Victor Stone, Cyborg, the newest addition to the team, replacing old veteran Justice League member Martian Manhunter, which, is a little touchy for me because I really love the character, but at the same time, you have to realize in 2011, to have an entirely white team, it's not good for optics. And I know some of you can argue that Martian Manhunter can choose whatever race he is. Shut up. That doesn't count. Shut up. Anyway, Cyborg. Best known as a member of the Teen Titans, this book does a really good job of laying his background as a high school football player who was unfortunately in a horrible accident that left most of his body unusable, and he later has to get robotic implants, and that's how he gets his powers, so that's pretty rad. This time they tie it into Mother Box technology, which makes him extremely useful in the end and actually makes him the one to be able to send Darkseid back to Apokolips, his home world. The thing is, he really doesn't do anything before then. He's just on the sidelines, and we get flashes of him and his father scientists, but aside from that, nothing. There's no real personality behind him. There's no really any appeal. He's just there, and when he gets there, he says he doesn't want to be part of the team, but then he just is, for whatever reason. So that's a letdown. Aquaman almost has the reverse problem, where when he first ends, he's a dominant personality and immediately gets everyone's attention, and even has really cool action sequences, two specifically, that are really spectacular. But aside from that, he's also just on the sidelines, really given little to no attention. Wonder Woman is there for the most part, but she's very radically simplified, and it's very odd to me. She's really childlike, which, makes sense because she comes from Paradise Island. She's not really used to this society, so, she doesn't really know the social conventions and all that. But it's really astonishing how much they make her seem like a kid. She even has a hissy fit at one point with Steve Trevor, where she complains that he's treating her like a child, which she's kind of acting like. She's going around breaking everything, and I get it. She's not used to normal society, and this is actually kind of how she was acting in the start of her own Wonder Woman movie when she first comes to the real world. But still, at least in that movie, we got to see her as not that first. We got to see her as a peaceful, loving person. But in this, it's just smash, 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 fight, fight, fight. That's all she wants to do until the very end, where she has this really weird conversation with Darkseid, where she's like, this world doesn't belong to anyone and everyone. It's real weird that it just takes that handbrake turn into the classic, loving, peaceful Wonder Woman. And then she stabs Darkseid's eye out, which is, pretty rad. Then we have Barry Allen the Flash. He's there, there's nothing really of note of him, I guess. He's very generic. It's really weird, especially considering how much of a dominant personality he was in the comics before this. It's just kind of weird that he's there. Superman is also a pretty big letdown, where the only really scene of note of him is his opening scene where he fights Batman and Green Lantern, and that, to be fair, is pretty cool. And the Flash and him have this cool sequence where they're dodging Darkseid's Omega beams, but neither of them really stand out at all. They're kind of overthrown by the two actually dominant personalities in the comic. Those characters being Green Lantern and Batman, Hal Jordan and Bruce Wayne, respectively. They're the only ones that are there from the start and are there through all 6 issues of this story, and they really get the only arcs of this story. Green Lantern is abrasive and kind of a jerkwad the entire story, but then he kind of turns over a new leaf and decides, hey, there's an alien invasion, we might all die, maybe I shouldn't be a jerk. And Batman also gets over himself from being a moody jerk-off to actually sacrificing himself in a bid to get Superman back. But not really sacrificing himself because he's fine. This is the first 6 issues of an ongoing series, so nothing was ever going to happen to him, but it's fine. And this all happens in what I consider the worst scene of this comic, where Batman and Green Lantern have a heart-to-heart, and Batman just takes off his mask, revealing his identity to this man that he not only doesn't like, but also just met like an hour ago. So, whatever. I know it's supposed to be about personal growth, but it just feels very incongruous with the characterization that we've seen in this comic up until that point. Also, Green Lantern is just horrible in this. It's crazy. He's abrasive, he's obnoxious. When Wonder Woman first appears, he says dibs, like that isn't a grown woman slashing up aliens, and we're all about to die, but sure, dibs, yeah, whatever. But it's just so weird. He has a speech when he finally decides to become a leader that feels very Hal Jordan-esque, but the start is just, and sure, whatever, again, personal growth, he's younger here, still feels like a bad person, and I don't like him. He's very unlikable in this story. That said, him and Batman do probably have the most fleshed out personalities in the book. And, the others, it's kind of a disappointment that the others are so bland and that these two real buttheads are the core of the story. And I think the dialogue really lets down a lot of them. It's very generic, especially Superman's and the Flash's. But I will say that all of them do have a pretty good introduction in the series. Just that it tapers off towards the end. Except Cyborg, where it's the reverse. He's unimportant until the end. But, it's a problem that I think this book has. That all of them are established really quick and then just kind of coalesce into one mass. And I really think that that's best personified, not even by them, but by Darkseid, who I think was a horrible choice as the first villain. Ignoring the fact that making the greatest threat in the DC universe your first outing, kind of weird, but whatever. But he's also immediately established as a threat, like taking out the entire league except the Flash and Superman, but then again they have that Omega Beam scene where both of them are taken out again. It's really good stuff, but afterwards, he just becomes a gray wall for the League to throw themselves at. His motives are very vaguely defined, but, super generic. Taking over the world, invasion, he's going to use our people as resources for his army, whatever. You know the deal. Yeah, and it's just weird that this was how they decided to start off the League, with not only the greatest threat, but also making him less interesting than he usually is, and instead just making him this big, evil, inexplainable mass that the League just has to fight again, especially when there's so many actual Justice League villains who could use a brand new introduction to the new continuity, a new establishing, if you will. But, whatever, Darkseid again, sure. But anyway, hey, let's move on to the art. Yeah, man, Jim Lee has been a staple of comics since the 90s, and for good reason. The man is a force to be reckoned with. It's crazy how good the art in this book is. I really dig it. And I know there's complaints of Lee's artwork, and to be fair, those complaints are seen here. People's faces are kind of generic, pretty much the same all across the board, and the body types are all the same, but whatever. Jim Lee is still, I think, one of the greatest at crafting an action sequence. These things look of cinematic quality. You can feel the fluidity and motion coming through. It's crazy. The Superman versus Green Lantern and Batman scene is spectacular. The Flash and Superman running away from Omega beams is spectacular. Wonder Woman chopping through parademons is specially designed to be really, really cool. I do have to say that there is kind of a lack in emotional resonance in the very few non-action beats that there is. There's a scene with Cyborg and his father as he's dying that I think kind of lacks a certain emotional punch. And there's also a Wonder Woman bonding with a small child over ice cream, which is very nice. That seems like the most Wonder Woman moment of this book. But I don't know, it just doesn't really come through in the artwork as well. The faces are just kind of stoic. You can't really see you can't really see the emotion behind the character. But hey, Jim Lee, you don't get Jim Lee just for emotional sequences, You get Jim Lee for big action set pieces, and he delivers. And that's, I think I'll give that a pass, because it's really great work for the whole thing. Jim Lee's also mostly known for his still images that become posters and stuff like that, and there's a lot in this. Pretty much every issue ends with it. But, hey, if the only complaint is that there's too many really cool poster-esque drawings, I don't think that's really a complaint. So I think the art on the whole is very, very good, and I think the strongest part of this book. Overall, Justice League is perhaps the most emblematic series of the New 52. It's flashy, it's familiar but fresh, it looks great, but it seems oddly hollow. The finished product feels rushed. As great as some of the best scenes are, it feels like something's missing here. The book wants us to care about the characters, but also wants to be very clear that these are not the same characters we already care about, while also not doing much to make these new iterations interesting. I can't really say it's a bad comic. I remember enjoying it when I was first getting into comics, and to its credit, it's a great starting point for new readers, for the League in general, but particularly for this new continuity of the DC Universe. That said, there are many other Justice League stories that, while maybe not being super accessible to everyone, handle the team dynamics and action beats better than this story does. This feels like the climax to a story that was never told. Again, not saying it's bad, there's really great stuff in both the writing and especially the art, but it's lacking in substance and, I think, even charm. And while that prevents me from being overly positive on it, I can definitely see its appeal and why many people enjoy it. And speaking of appeal and potentially enjoying something, if you like this video, smash that like button. Smash it right to smithereens. Smash it, and then consider subscribing, because I am doing a breakdown of all the New 52 series. There are more videos already on the channel, or if you like something else, I have a whole back catalog that you can check out. Please do make yourself comfortable here. I'll be here for the foreseeable future, it seems like. So hey, I hope you tag along for the ride, because I'd love to have you. As always, thank you for joining me. I'm the Watcher of New Earth, and I'll see you next time. Take care.